Hey kiddos, do you like corn? My family and I love corn on the cob. We eat it all during the summer. Well, when it's not summertime and we can't get fresh corn on the cob, we like to enjoy some frozen corn or canned corn because we love corn. And where does corn come from? The farms and the farmers, yes, they grow corn. In fact, Mr. Stewart has this big bag of seed corn because he planted some corn last year and watched it grow. Remember, he wants to be a farmer someday. So we are going to do a science experiment today called Dancing Corn. Sounds fun? I know. Well, when we do a science activity, we have 4 steps. We have our materials, we have the procedure, predictions, and conclusions. So I want to go over step number 1, the materials that you'll need for this really cool science experiment. You will need some corn kernels, the kind of corn kernels that you use to pop popcorn. Do you like popcorn? Well, that's corn. So you'll need some of those. You'll also need some white vinegar, some baking soda, and then a clear jar. Now, this is just an old spaghetti jar that when we were done making spaghetti, I just washed it out. So I've got this clear jar here. You'll also want to have a measuring cup and then some type of container. Now, if you've ever done something with vinegar and baking soda, do you know what happens when those 2 things come together? There's a chemical reaction, yes. So we just went over the materials and I'm going to go over the procedure, but let's start to make a prediction. What do you think might happen if we're adding vinegar and baking soda together? Do you think there's going to be a chemical reaction? I think so. We did that one of our other science experiments. Well, the procedure is that you take your corn kernels and you'll want to put about a cup of corn kernels inside your glass jar. So I'm going to use this measuring cup. It's a 1/4 cup, so I'm going to need 4 of them. And I'm going to put my corn kernels. Whoops, some are going on the floor, but that's okay. We'll clean it up when we're all done. Okay, so I've got my cup of corn kernels in my jar. And then the next step is that you want to take your vinegar and fill your jar up so it's about 2/3 of the way full. You're probably going to use, maybe a cup or 2 cups of vinegar. We're just going to pour this in. Do you see what's happening to the corn? Some of that corn is rising to the top of the jar, and then the rest of it staying down. Let me see if I can bring this in closer so that you can see what I'm talking about. Do you see that some of the corn is floating on the top and some is just staying at the bottom? Interesting. Well, let's keep moving on with our science experiment. The next step is that we are going to be taking our baking soda and we're going to be adding it to the jar. Now, once again, if you've done anything with vinegar and baking soda before, you know that there is a chemical reaction that's going to take place and it might get kind of messy. So I've got this container here that I'm going to put underneath my jar to catch any messes, okay? Well, I'm about ready to add this baking soda. Before we do, we've already guessed that there's going to be some type of chemical reaction. We might have a bit of a mess, but also I'm wondering, how is it going to affect the corn kernels that are inside of there? Do you think something's going to happen with the corn kernels? Well, let's watch and find out. Okay, we've got our baking soda. I had my baking soda in the refrigerator, so it's a little hard. I have to kind of loosen it up a bit. You want to get about 1/4 of a cup of baking soda, and we're going to add this in, okay? Are you ready? Oh boy, oh, it's coming out over the top. I'm going to add a little bit more because it wasn't quite 1/4 of a cup. Well, it's definitely making a chemical reaction. Do you hear all that fizzing? Well, let's see if it's done anything to those corn kernels that are inside. We have to just kind of wait and watch. A scientist used their 5 senses. I definitely could hear something. I hear a lot of fizzing. I'm watching. In fact, I'm going to move this in so that you can see closely what is happening inside this jar. I'm noticing, I don't know if you can see it or not, but those corn kernels are going up to the top. Oh my goodness, I think I might need to add some more vinegar. I think that I'm going to set this down for just a minute because I think that we had so much corn in there. Maybe my jar was a little too small. Whoop! Because I added more vinegar. Look, another chemical reaction. It's reacting with that baking soda in there. I think this will hopefully help. I'm looking to see if it does anything to the corn kernels. I know this might be kind of difficult for you to see because something's happening way down here at the bottom. I don't see any corn. I don't know if you can see this. I don't see any corn at the bottom. It all has risen to the top of the jar, but what I see happening at the bottom of the jar is that sometimes the corn kernels are moving up to the rest of the corn kernels, and then some are going back down, and then they're moving up, and then they're moving down. It's like they're dancing. Why do you think that's happening? Oh, I can't wait for you to do this experiment and to be able to see close up, because it just doesn't do it justice when I'm trying to show you what's actually happening. So you have to do this experiment at home. Why do you think the corn kernels are moving up and down in the jar? It looks like they're dancing. Well, did you know that when the baking soda and the vinegar have a chemical reaction, it makes those little bubbles, and those little air bubbles are sometimes catching and attaching themselves to the corn kernels and causing them to lift up, and then the air bubble pops and the corn kernel falls back down. And then there might be another air bubble that clings to a little kernel and causes it to rise to the top, and then pop, and it falls back down. Oh, it's so cool. It's like the corn kernels are dancing. Well, I think if I did this experiment again, instead of putting a cup of corn kernels, I think I wouldn't use quite as much, maybe only a half a cup. But I followed the directions. I wanted to test it out. I think next time I do it, I won't use quite as much, and maybe there will be more room for my corn kernels to dance and move around. Okay, well, I hope you have fun doing this dancing corn experiment. See you later, kiddos.